Replacing an attic heater involves several electrical considerations to ensure safety and code compliance. The situation involves replacing an existing electric heating unit in the attic that has a single 2-pole 100 amp breaker integral to the unit. The new unit requires two 2-pole 60 amp breakers, which changes the electrical requirements significantly. The original wiring is XHHW size #4. The primary question is whether a breaker box can be installed in the attic to feed the 260 amp subdivided loads from the existing wire, or if new individual branch circuits are required from the main panel. The correct approach is that the new unit must be fed from the main panel with individual branch circuits. This is primarily because the existing wire type feeding the old heater, which is XHHW-4, is not adequately rated for the combined load of the new unit. XHHW-4 wire is typically rated for 70 amps under normal conditions according to the National Electrical Code, or NEC. The new unit has two 2-pole 60 amp breakers, which means each breaker protects a separate 60 amp circuit. If these circuits were combined onto a single wire, the wire would need to handle a potential load of 120 amps. Therefore, the existing #4 XHHW wire is insufficient. The appropriate wire size must be determined based on the load and applicable ampacity tables found in the NEC, specifically Table 310.16. To handle a 60 amp load, the minimum wire size is typically 6 AWG copper wire with a 75°C insulation rating. However, two separate 6 AWG conductors would be needed, one for each 60 amp breaker. Furthermore, the National Electrical Code, or NEC, requires that branch circuits be protected by individual overcurrent devices. This means that each of the 260 amp loads must have its own 60 amp breaker to provide proper protection. Installing a breaker box in the attic and feeding it with a single 100 amp breaker would not meet this requirement because it would not provide individual overcurrent protection for each 60 amp circuit. The purpose of overcurrent protection is to prevent the wires from overheating and potentially causing a fire if there is a short circuit or overload. If a single 100 amp breaker were used to protect both circuits, a fault on one circuit could draw more than 60 amps but less than 100 amps, which would not trip the 100 amp breaker. This could lead to the wires overheating and creating a fire hazard. The NEC mandates that each circuit must have its own overcurrent protection device sized appropriately for the load. Therefore, the new unit must be fed from the main panel with individual branch circuits, each protected by a 60 amp breaker. This ensures that each circuit is properly protected and that the wiring is adequate for the load. In summary, firstly, the existing #4 XHHW wire is not rated to carry the combined load of the 260 amp circuits. Secondly, the NEC requires each branch circuit to have individual overcurrent protection. Thirdly, installing a breaker box in the attic with a single 100 amp breaker would not provide the necessary individual protection. Therefore, running individual branch circuits from the main panel is the correct and code-compliant solution. This will ensure the safety and proper operation of the new attic heater.